Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee. Today is Wednesday, October 16th. My name is Alondra Cano, and I am the chair of this committee, and I am joined today by council members Ellison, Jenkins, Fletcher, Palmisano, and Cunningham. Together, we are a quorum of this committee, and therefore we can conduct the official business before us. Today, our agenda has 3 items. Item number 1 is a public comment, receive and file public comments from the community. Item number 2 is a consent authorization for a joint powers agreement with the Police Department and the Department of Public Safety in the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to conduct state and federal fingerprint-based background checks. And item number 3 is a discussion item, which is a receive and file of the annual report from the Office of Police Conduct Review. Are there any questions on this agenda? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. So we shall take up item number 1, which is receiving public comment from the community regarding public safety issues. We have a timer here of 2 minutes per speaker, so we can allow everyone to get a chance to speak. We have a sign-in sheet with 10 speakers, and if you would like to sign up to speak, please walk over to our clerk over there, Ken, who can help you walk through the sign-in process. And so we have person number 1 will be Mr. Chuck Turek, followed by Grace Berkey.
Madam Chair, Chuck Turek, committee members, Chuck Turek. Since its inception 7 years ago, I have found that getting the Office of Police Conduct Review to answer informational questions is like pulling teeth. For example, I've asked what it means when the OPCR manual says the OPCR supervisors check coaching documents to make sure they are complete and comprehensive. Does it mean the forms were filled out completely by the precinct supervisor, or does it mean the investigation was complete? 4 times I have asked that question in writing without any response. Or take the requirement for serving on the Police Conduct Review panel of not having filed a complaint against an MPD officer for the past 5 years. 3 years ago, this committee asked that the OPCR consider removing that as a requirement, which I think it did, but now it's back. I've written the OPCR's joint supervisors asking how come, no response. Or take my informing OPCR staff that despite their complaint filing experience study of 3 years ago, the front desk officer at the 2nd precinct this August had no clue where the complaint forms were, telling me I had to go downtown to file a complaint, then telling me I had to do it online. Again, no response from the OPCR. Or take a recent mediation I had with a Minneapolis police officer. I asked that it be gun-free, which I thought was a rather low bar for mediation between equals. When it became clear that was not going to happen, I asked whether my complaint would be dismissed as a result of that, because there's a rule you have to negotiate or mediate in good faith. The outside agency, this conflict resolution center that the OPCR uses, answered immediately. The OPCR refused to answer. The mediation, it was with Lieutenant Bob Kroll, and I say without any hesitation that from my experience, Lieutenant Kroll in that mediation was far more rational, far more reasonable, far more responsive and responsible than the OPCR, or for that matter, this committee has been in responding to questions raised by the public. The OPCR does a lot of good work, but from my experience, that doesn't include answering legitimate questions coming from the public.
Thank you so much. Next speaker is Grace Berkey, followed by Keith McCarran.
Good morning, Council, and thank you for all your work around public safety. My name is Grace Berkey. I'm here today representing the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition, the Powderhorn Neighborhood Association, and also as a renter in Ventura Village. There are several parts of the city, including corridors like Lake Street, Bloomington, Franklin, Broadway, and others that are overburdened by a lack of resources to address the addiction, homelessness, and other livability and safety concerns they experience. The South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition has proposed a $10 million investment in strategic, street-level resources that we hope to meet with each of you about in the coming weeks. These resources address the concerns that we've been hearing as a coalition for the past 3 years or more, but as a community for at least 10 years. And these will come as no surprise to you. Things like a lack of public restrooms, open-air drug dealing, needles and other litter, sexual exploitation, unsheltered homelessness, the list goes on. We believe that a $10 million investment in street-level resources, specifically things like a robust outreach program, A street stand program and a public restroom fund is a necessary step for equity in the city of Minneapolis, and we look forward to discussing it further. And we also hope that you'll consider in the coming months, as we approach budget season and are in the middle of budget season, ways that you can start to invest in some of those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Keith McCarran, followed by Zoanna Martinez.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, council members, for hearing me. I emailed all of you on the 8th of this month asking a question about MECC. I asked if you were aware that there were 707 overtime slots for the rest of October, which adds up to 1,412 hours of overtime. That's before anybody calls out or has to go home early or come in late. My question to you is that a representative use of the city's money, and who is responsible for that? Is that management or employees? And I realize they're working with a new director down there. They're still currently without a floor supervisor that is needed and an assistant director. And currently they're forcing people in on overtime on their day off. And they do as a regular basis, just tell people at the end of the shift, you're staying, you're staying, you're staying. So it does endanger the public. It does endanger the responders themselves, and it does and it endangers the employees of the center. It's very stressful. I'd like to see you guys get more involved in this and put some pressure on the director to slash that overtime budget. One of the ways they can do that is to take the step back from combining both positions from call taker and dispatcher. People are specialized in their knowledge, and everybody coming into the center needs to really understand how to take a call before they even approach dispatching. So I appreciate your time. It does add into the whole overall tone of what we're talking about today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zoanna Martinez, followed by Kim Millard.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. I'm Zoanna Martinez. I work with the Lake Street Council. It's the business association. I also live in Ward 12 in the city of Minneapolis. So our office has been working on safety initiatives for many years now. Just yesterday, we had a meeting in Uptown with more than 50 stakeholders that attended. And it was quite impressive to just see the lack of knowledge of the budget system and how important voices are during this time. The inspector yesterday mentioned that the budget proposal has 14 new officers that are coming or are hopeful to come to the Minneapolis Police Department, and the inspector mentioned in the 5th precinct that none of them will be allocated to that area. With the uptake in homelessness and the opioid, there's some valid concerns in that area of what's taking place in Uptown and all along Lake Street. I've come here before to speak about Midtown and East Lake, so I'm going to focus on Uptown today. So the officer wellness is also a huge priority to us, as we know, as if officers have long shifts, they are overtired, they can't perform to the extent that they should be able to and serve the public. And we consider that a high concern. And so we feel the need that we really need to prioritize the Minneapolis Police Department budget as well as resources to serve our underrepresented communities, especially in the Midtown area of Lake Street as well. So I just want I want to thank you guys for all your hard work and making these sessions available for people to come speak. We value your time and just you hearing out the community members. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Kim Millard, followed by Pete Gamades.
Good morning. I'm Kim Millard. I live in Northrop. I've got 2 minutes and a lot of documents. I'm here to talk to you guys about the Police Federation. It's not a union contract. As many of you know, because we've been scheduling meetings with you and talking to you, we are at an unprecedented time where we, the community members, are seeking to speak into this contract because we, as community members, are the beneficiaries of it. And on the reverse side of that, if there is misconduct, if there is inadequate staffing, because the management of the police force does not have the authority to put officers where they need them. We, the public, are the ones who suffer for that, and we're the ones who lose out, and we're the ones who, in some cases, in worst case scenarios, get brutalized, and so on and so forth. And so we believe that we have a basis to have a voice in this, and are asking you guys to work with us this time around. This is the police union contract. It's about 95 pages. I've read the whole thing several times. And this is the 1 or 2 pages. It's 2 pages. It's front and back. It's called an executive summary. We don't know who wrote it the last time the contract was up for review. And there's things on here that aren't even correct. So, like, this is what you guys were using in the past to approve the contract without having read it. And we're asking just that things be better this time. We have gone through and scrubbed the contract. We've come up with 14 recommendations that we are asking you guys to adopt and advocate for and use your voice to influence. The top 3 on the front, these are all over there. And one of the things that we're asking for is a firm cap on hours worked by the police. There are studies, this is one, I will bring it up and you guys can have this copy, essentially showing that 12-hour shifts is when we go past 10-hour shifts. Officers have greater fatigue, they're more stressed out, they're more likely to operate based on their negative biases or prejudices. They have more accidents, even things that aren't like, I don't like you and I'm going to beat you up. They have more accidents. And so we're asking for a firm cap on hours worked is one of the things.
Thank you.
Thanks. And
Pete Gamates, followed by Jim Meyer.
Hello, I'm Pete Gamatis, and I am part of the Racial Justice Network, and we've been working with a coalition of groups and formed MPLS for a Better Police Contract, and we're here today to talk about those recommendations. Kim mentioned one of them. Just at a high level, the 3 main ones are eliminate officer fatigue. Kim talked about that. Mandatory mental health screenings, and then more flexible staffing model. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on that one. So right now in the contract, in terms of flexible staffing, it states that 70% of the positions from police officers need to be biddable. And what we're recommending is that changes to 50%. What we're seeing today is that officers we're not able to put them where they're needed and also meet the needs of the skills and talents that they have. And so, as you know, even in downtown Minneapolis, there's open positions that have already been funded by you as council members, and we're just not able to fund them or fill those positions with officers. And so before we talk about adding more officers, and I know some of you are supporting that, we need to think about how we can do this more efficiently with the resources that we have. And in order to do that, we need to address the specific element in the contract that doesn't allow us to do that today. In summary, too, this is a very unique opportunity, and a lot of council members today have been elected for their desire to make changes to public safety and reform the police department. And as I know, like the council doesn't have direct control over the police department, but there are 2 ways that you do, as you know, the budget and the contract. And so we're asking you to exert your influence and your ability to veto the contract if these recommendations aren't in the final document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim Meyer, followed by Don Drewyard. Just wait to correct the name when you get here, please. Jim Meyer, and followed by Don.
I'm Jim Meyer, citizen from 51st and Chicago Avenue, born and raised and living there again from Ward 11. And I've come to meet some of you in my advisory board work. I absolutely respect fundamentally the hard work and difficult and dangerous work that you do. But after the meeting on July 31st, I had just a few things to ask or question. Steve, I greatly appreciated the almost personal tour of downtown closing time, but I thought the very thinly veiled defunding threat to the chief, because honesty and truth was a low bar. I thought that was really audacious statement for a member of the City Council of Minneapolis at this time to make, in my opinion. Moving on, at that meeting, there was a vast request for arbitration results from years and years past. The results of those, the overturns, the losses and the overturns, and I believe there was a request for what disciplines followed the losses. And as a longtime, union steward and protector of rights and the target and victim of some termination tries, I didn't understand what was meant by the question, like what was done for discipline in the overturns. I think arbitration, it's you lose, you lose. I just want that understood. That it seemed like a odd question. Lastly, around the time, and I hastened to battle with Cameron Gordon, but he posted a Facebook post around May 24th showing a dramatic drop in a top line of the non-UCR crime. But that's very movable if the citizenry just isn't reporting crime, property crime isn't valued, if your thresholds for problem property rise so high, and I experienced this firsthand because I had trouble on my block and I had to intervene myself.
Thank you. Dawn Drewyard, followed by Ethan Fitzgerald.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Dawn Drewyard. I'm the chef and co-owner of a business located in South Minneapolis. We're called Fabulous Catering. We've been in business for 20 years. We've been in our location, 2900 13th Avenue South, for 10 years. We own our property. I'm here to very much mirror the South Minneapolis Public Health Council that you just came in. I guess to raise awareness more than anything, and to kind of really put some strong words behind the real life situation that is happening down in our neighborhood where we are doing business. We employ a lot of women. We have started the 15-hour an hour minimum that I know preemptively of the city mandate. We are creating jobs for people. Our staff come and go at many different times of the night, and people just do not feel safe. The situation down there has gotten, it's kind of beyond the pale of what we're seeing on a daily basis. Drug dealing out in the open, prostitution, human trafficking. We call 911 as many times as we're able, and it's at the point where I'm here in front of you imploring you to try to put some focus into the neighborhoods, because us as business owners, we love being a part of Minneapolis. We love that our neighborhood is in the inner city. We've taken a lot of pride in that. We realized when we bought our building, which was a boarded up property, that businesses like us moving into neighborhoods is what's going to help transition for the positive. But right now, to be honest with you, setting up shop in Columbia Heights or St. Louis Park or Richfield doesn't seem that bad. And for us to have to tell some of our employees that if you're not safe to get another job, it's hard.
Thank you. Then Fitzgerald, followed by Cheryl Personnel.
Hello, my name's Eden Fitzgerald. I'm business partners with Dawn. I'm the co-owner of Fabulous Catering, and I just want to say that we have so enjoyed being part of Minneapolis and the community, and it is really concerning to us when I have to look at a staff member and say, I don't want you to come to work and not feel safe. And if that means that you need to get a different job, then I may have to tell you that that's what you need to do for your own mental health. And we believe in the coalition and putting resources, and we don't have the answer. We just want to bring the attention to the issue, and that it's so hard when we come to work and our property is just littered with needles because we're not there all night. And we don't know how. We just want to raise awareness and to say that we do really like being part of Minneapolis. We both live in Minneapolis. Our families are here, and that we would like to encourage the city to take progressive steps to tackle the issue.
Thank you. Cheryl Personnel, followed by Nancy Peterson.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Personnel. I'm a 30-year resident of Minneapolis. This week in the Dallas Morning News, they quoted a expert on criminal justice who said increasingly police academies and departments are focusing initial and subsequent training on the fact that officers can be hurt or killed at any time. It exponentially focuses on the risk of officer safety. They have very heightened sense, as a result, they have a very heightened sense of danger and risk. And as a further result, although policing is inherently dangerous, we all know that, officers tend to go into situations feeling their lives are constantly in danger rather than focusing on assessing and engaging with other human beings. System change starts with good agreements. System change starts with healthy commitments to each other. These contract negotiations need to be more than tweaking a few employment terms and changing the dates at the top of the page. This contract negotiation is an opportunity to connect the dots between the horrific police-induced stress and harm in our communities and the archaic union-holding leadership hostage work agreements we now have in place. This contract negotiation is an opportunity to create the conditions that hold this city council, our police administrators and leaders, the union, and hundreds of officers accountable to a more humane way of working together and working for us. This negotiation is an opportunity to equip every officer with the expectation and the rights to more enlightened, healthy policies and practices. This negotiation is an opportunity to begin to reset the focus on true community policing versus militaristic fear and intimidation. I heartily endorse all 14 recommendations put forward by the coalition. As a member of the Racial Justice Network, I ask you to do better. Our offices deserve better. Our communities deserve better. We all deserve better.
Nancy Peterson, followed by Marquez Armstrong.
I am Nancy Peterson, and I live in Falcon Heights. We all need Minneapolis to work for everyone, and I endorse all the recommendations that our coalition is bringing in today, and especially what Cheryl just said about the importance of the council really engaging in the discussion of this document. If you don't do that, I can tell you from personal experience that you end up with a dead, meaningless document that cannot help with any of the circumstances that it's intended to address. If you do, and you know, we're setting a historic precedent by bringing community input, so we're hoping that you meet that with a historic precedent for the amount of City Council involvement and creative involvement in making this a living document that actually maybe looks ahead a little bit to see what kinds of things might come up and not only deal in what's right now. I mentioned personal experience. I live in Falcon Heights. We contract out for police services. Our contract with St. Anthony PD turned out to be totally useless 3 years ago when one of their officers shot Philando Castile on our street, paid for out of our taxes. It turned out that the multi-year no-bid contract that our city council had signed, which also gave them zero input into anything, was worse than useless. It was so divisive because when we went to the council and said, oh my God, this happened, you've got to stop the profiling that takes place, we couldn't go anywhere with it.
Thank you.
I wish you better.
Marquise Armstrong, followed by Nikema Levy Armstrong.
Good morning, City Council members. Thank you all for who came out in support of the 12 recommendations that the coalition has put forward. I am here representing the Racial Justice Network. I'm also a community member who resides in North Minneapolis. I also have businesses in North Minneapolis as well. There are two things that I want to speak about the 12 recommendations. The first is eliminating officer fatigue. So in many professions, the medical profession, airline pilots, even truckers, there's a limit put on the number of hours that they can perform simply because it's unsafe if they go beyond that. And so I don't want an airline pilot who's fatigued flying me to my vacation place. I don't want a trucker who is on the road driving a semi driving next to me who is fatigued. Nor do I want, or any of us want, officers who have deadly weapons on their hip who are overworked to be the people that I have to call to step into a situation. As a matter of fact, I am extremely hesitant to call the police, and I'm sure you all know why, because we've had so many incidents where someone has called for assistance with the police with mental wellness checks and different things, and the individuals ended up either extremely violated and at worst dead. That leads into the other point that I want to speak about, and that's the mandatory mental health screening. I am a mental health practitioner, and one of the businesses that I own is a mental health practice. And so to have an individual that is struggling with a mental health issue, a regular citizen, right? None of us believe that they should have access to a deadly weapon. Can we agree with that? I think we all agree on that. Again, police officers, outside of the position that they hold, they are regular citizens as well. And so it is important, it is incumbent upon us, it is to our advantage to make sure that they have the mental health screenings that they need. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Nakima Levy-Armstrong, followed by David Bicking.
Good morning. I am here to stand in solidarity with the coalition who has made 14 very sensible recommendations to the Police Federation contract. It was maybe a year or so ago that many of us came to City Hall where there was a request by City Council to change the city charter to give you guys more power and authority. And we know that those efforts did not come to pass. And I was one of the people who was not supportive of City Council having more power because I haven't seen you all effectively utilize the power that you currently have to address the policing issues within the city. It is time for a paradigm shift, and what we are asking is for you all to use your power now to go through this contract, to take it seriously, and to listen to the recommendations made by this coalition. They have spent hours upon hours combing through the contract, doing research as volunteers, going above and beyond what a resident should have to do, given that they are not elected officials. So essentially, they are doing the job of this council and the mayor in order to keep people safe. As I was sitting there, as a business owner in North Minneapolis and also business in downtown Minneapolis, I know that there are concerns with homelessness, with drug addiction, unemployment, and those issues. But at the same time, I was appalled to hear the women say that they're constantly having to call 911. The problem is that 911 too often has led to a death sentence for people out on the streets who are struggling with mental health issues. So we need alternatives. Why would we invest in 14 new officers when those officers do not have a background in social services or mental health? They're not going to be able to solve the problems. What they're going to do is take people to jail, which means more cost to the city and the county. And when people are back on the streets, we have the same problems happening. So please do your job. We stand in solidarity with you, and we're asking you to look at the contract, take it seriously, and add the recommendations of the coalition.
Thank you so much. David Bicking, followed by Stacy Gian Sherman.
Hello, Dave Bicking, South Minneapolis, Ward 8. We need better policing, not simply more policing. This issue with the contract comes up at the same time as there's discussion of the police budget. You'll notice that most of the recommendations in this contract are basically cost neutral. We don't have, as a coalition, an interest in the pay and benefits, but we are looking for better policing. This limit on the biddable positions is important that way. You've been getting a lot of pressure and propaganda from the Downtown Council, the Chamber of Commerce, the Star Tribune about the need for more officers. Almost all of that is focused on downtown crime. And at the same time, because of the limitations in the contract, you don't have as many officers as the police department would like to have downtown, because of the Federation contract. Changing the contract is a heck of a lot cheaper than hiring more officers, and it puts the officers where they belong. Some officers shouldn't be on the street. Some officers are very good at community relations or dealing with that. There should be the flexibility to do that. That would help. The other thing I want to address quickly is with a contract, you have to be willing to walk away. The union can say, our members aren't going to stand for this. The city is there saying, we're going to ratify this no matter what it is. We aren't even going to look at it. You know, if you're in the market in Latin America and you start bargaining for something that you want, if you aren't willing to walk away, at least for them to know that you are willing to walk away, you're not going to get a very good deal. I've been there. I say, oh, no, I don't want it at that price, and I walk away. People practically run after you. Oh, I can sell it to you for this. Well, it's the same way with the contract. You have to be willing on the back end to veto it if the contract is not what it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Gary, followed by Michelle Gross.
Chair Cano, council members, I'm Stacy Gary and Sherman. I'm here to support the police recommendations as a resident of Ward 9, as an attorney, and as a very strong union member. Although I don't speak for my union, I am a union steward with the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, Local 59, with the educational support professionals. I'm also on the district and union contract negotiating team. I know what it takes, and I know how hard it is to go through union negotiations. And I want you to know that when we went and scrubbed this contract, we undertook this not as an anti-union effort, not as an effort to make police accountability something negative. We took it upon ourselves to make this a very positive effort. We met every Friday for 2 to 4 hours throughout the summer, throughout the fall, in a very diligent citizen and resident effort. Because police accountability comes from a balance of management rights and union rights. It comes from making sure our sisters and brothers in the Police Federation Union are taken care of, and that is the best way to take care of our community. These are preventative measures. We have got to stop having a reactionary effort when we see things that happen with police brutality, police killings. We've got to understand the stressors and the difficulty of being on the streets and support our union members, our Federation members, through a contract that makes sense. This is a contract that makes common sense and dollars and cents. We believe that it doesn't add any costs, and it will substantially save costs in lawsuits, in domestic violence calls, both within the community and within the family of our sisters and brothers. This is a stressful job. We need to take care of police so we can take care of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Gross, followed by Kevin Chavez.
Pull these down a little bit. Good morning, Chair Cano and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this morning. Public employee collective bargaining agreements exist to ensure that employees are treated fairly, but they also exist to benefit the community that these employees serve. The Police Federation contract, however, has been an exception. For years, we've heard from past city council members, and I should tell you that I have been living in Minneapolis for 27, 28 years now, and have been doing police accountability work in this community for over 20 years. And for all these years, I've heard from past city councils that they just don't have the power to oversee police, and that the Police Federation contract ties our hands and such. Yet these same city council members would just keep on approving the contract with little or no review or input from the community, based only on a one-page or two-page executive summary. But now we have a new city council and a new opportunity to address the flaws and concerns in the Police Federation contract. And as you've already heard, a coalition of roughly 14 organizations has been working diligently for several months now, scrubbing the contract and coming up with a set of cost-neutral but very sensible recommendations that we think are largely non-controversial. These recommendations provide you with a great opportunity to have great input into the Police Federation contract. We even made it easy for you because we didn't just give you the overview. We've given you an 8-page document with the actual wording that would correct the flaws in the contract. So we did the work. And we brought it to you. And now we're asking you to do your part. And your part is that you have influence. Yes, I recognize that you won't be sitting necessarily at the negotiating table, but you have great influence about what items are to be negotiated in the contract. And then you have veto power if those items don't make it into the contract. So you have a lot of power, and this is an important place for you to be to exercise that power. And so again, we ask you to bring forward these 14 recommendations and to not accept the contract if they don't include them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Chavez, followed by Daphne Brown.
All right. Hi, my name is Kevin Chavez, and I live in Ward 10, and I'm a member of AFSCME, SEIU, and DSA. I'm also chairperson of Our Revolution Twin Cities, which has long advocated for police accountability. Our initial demand to you was making $50 million of the police budget contingent on them voluntarily adopting a civilian review board to review cases of misconduct whose recommendations would be implemented in every case. The police have seen your failure to hold them accountable and are now publicly backing a pathological liar and white supremacist for 2020. Last week, when their president was in town, he said our representative Ilhan Omar, he said of her, how the hell did that ever happen? How did you have such a person representing you in Minnesota? I'm very angry at you people right now. And he walked away from the mic in disgust at his own audience. Moments later, Minneapolis police officers spoke praising him and took photos with their red shirts. Is this what police accountability in Minneapolis looks like? Emboldening those who have nothing but hatred for the people they claim to serve and protect? We deserve a safe, just, sustainable city, and the contract proposals we are bringing before you will help us get there. You will see these are common sense proposals. You have the power to make staff directives and veto any tentative agreement. Do not pretend you lack power. The Republican president says he wants to close borders to stop immigrants until we can figure out what the hell is going on. If you need more time to get a good contract, continue bargaining for months until you can figure out what the hell is going on with the police. Take your time and get this contract done right.
Thank you. Daphne Brown.
Good day. My name is Daphne Brown. I'm a member of Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar Clark, and I support the Racial Justice Network, and I'm here on behalf of the people. We do support the mandatory mental health screenings. However, I think that the screening should be every 3 months as opposed to every 3 years. We have officers out here with weapons taking our lives. There's no need for them to be tested every 3 years. That makes no sense to us, the people out here. Not only that, the animalistic testing should be added to the drug and alcohol testing. All testing should be added for officers, but for our safety out here. You know, we are unsafe in our homes, on our streets, in our schools, everywhere we go. As soon as we wake up in the morning, they're the first thing we see and the last thing we see. And we need y'all support and y'all solidarity out here. We are suffering extreme circumstances out here. And being with Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar, an extreme measure would be to help us get our Police Accountability Council. We need it now. We need some power ourselves. So we come and ask for y'all solidarity and y'all support. But if not, we will go by means to get it ourselves. We are tired of being hunted down out here in the streets when y'all are supposed to ensure that they are protecting us, but that's not happening. So that's why I come up off the couch and got involved, and we all are going to come and get involved. So try to work with us. Let's work together. We all have children. We have a problem with police brutality in this country. Minnesota knows we have a problem in our backyard. Help us fix it, or let someone sit down that will. That's all I got to say, you know.
Thank you. That is the last registered speaker. Are there any other speakers that would like to come and address the council this morning? This is the last person I had on the list. Alrighty, that is the first section of our agenda. So all those in favor of receiving and filing the public comments from the community regarding public safety issues, please say aye. Aye. All those in favor of approving our consent item, which is a joint powers agreement with the Police Department and the Department of Public Safety Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, please say aye. Aye. And now we are on to our third item, which is a discussion item, a presentation by the Office of Police Conduct Review. This is part of our annual report. So if we could please have city staff join us, introduce yourself for the benefit of the public, and get us started.
Okay, good morning. Chair Cano, Vice Chair Fletcher, Council Vice President Jenkins, and council members. My name is Imani Jafar. I am the Director of the Office of Police Conduct Review, and today I'm pleased to present our annual report to you. So just an overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about complaint volume and outcomes and give you some numbers on what the year looks like. We're also going to go through some body camera review efforts. You invited us here in May to present about body cameras, and we wanted to give you an update on what some of those numbers look like now. We're also going to talk about collaborative efforts. Office of Police Conduct Review has worked with other departments in the city on some pretty meaningful projects. We wanted to highlight that today. We also wanted to give you a little snapshot of what's ahead for the coming year. So first is the complaint volumes and outcomes. So the bracket we're looking at is Q4 2018 to Q3 2019. We are at 611 complaints. This is an 8% increase from a similar timeline that we covered from last year. And it's the highest previous year on record. So that is a 66% increase over the prior average. In Q3 2019 set the record for the most complaints filed at 181 complaints. The increase in complaints appears to be a steady trend. So last year when we covered this ground, 1 year probably isn't statistically good enough to say, you know, it's going to kind of be at this level, but now after 2 years, it appears that this is a steady trend in complaint filing. In the next slide, what we wanted to do was break down by year what each quarter looks like. So you can see that each different color correlates to a different year starting in 2015. So you can see that in each year, the spike happens at different times depending on the year. This year it's in Q3, but we'll still be processing Q4 after this presentation. And you can see that there's that 181 in 2019 in Q3. So one thing that has really helped Office of Police Conduct Review build public trust is the amount of time after someone files a complaint for it to actually go through the intake process. And the intake process is when the joint supervisors sit together to actually review a complaint. So we have civilian investigators on staff who actually put complaints together to be presented to the joint supervisors to determine a track for the case. So you can see on this slide that as the numbers increased, especially when you look at that quarter 4 2018 when we're at 98 days to complete an intake. Now, what I wanted to point to was in last year's budget, you allocated an additional intake investigator, and you can see the positive impact of what happened there. Once the additional investigators started, the timeline to complete intakes dropped by 20 days, and it's continuing to drop despite the rising complaint numbers. So that is, from the feedback that we receive, something that's very important to the public, that once they file it, it gets in front of the joint supervisors in an efficient but thorough manner for us to review that. So coaching, as we've discussed before in this committee, is a really important tool for lower level violations, so lower level language and attitude, things that can be corrected by a conversation with a supervisor. So what we wanted to do is cover the coachings that were sent out in the past year. So you can see in 2018, the joint supervisors utilized the coaching tool quite a bit at 138 cases. Right now in 2019, there's 72 cases, but there will be more. They're still in process. One really positive thing that we did with coaching is we actually launched a SharePoint site so that the precincts can easily get the coaching documents and other leadership and MPD. It's been really a nice tool so that there's not a lot of email going back and forth. We're hoping that after that gets fully implemented, it is in all of the precincts and command staff now, that once people get used to using it, it's actually going to improve the coaching timelines because it's just a better way to share documents. We did implement a few years ago SharePoint for our review panel cases, and that actually helped efficiency in the review panel as well. So you're probably wondering, what happens to the coachings after we send them? Do officers actually get coached by their supervisors? And the answer is that they do. You can see that, especially in 2018 and 2019, majority of cases that go to coaching actually result in a supervisor sitting down with their employee. They do fill out paperwork for coaching that captures the conversation they've had, whether or not there's a policy violation. That paperwork all comes back to our office, and if anything is not satisfactory or we don't agree with the decision on coaching, we actually send it back. So those things are reviewed. But you can see in 91 cases last year coaching that they were coached, and then 29 were not. This year, of the 36 that are there, 26 have been coached, and we still have 37 that are in process right now. So the review panel outcomes for the bracket of time that we're talking about, 25 allegations have been reviewed. There's been two split.
Pause for a quick moment?
Yes.
Sorry, we have a question here for Councilmember Fletcher.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. I just wanted to ask, so what's happening in the 25% of cases that are referred to coaching but then not coaching isn't happening?
Chair Cano, Vice Chair Fletcher. So it can be a variety of things. A lot of times where we have an incident where we can't identify an officer at all, we may send it out to the precinct. That's a pretty common practice, saying unknown officer. They may do a small investigation to try and locate the person and see what happened. Sometimes it turns out it wasn't a Minneapolis Police Department officer, and so then that case goes uncoached. Other times it's unclear from the complaint what if the incident that is being complained about actually happened, and so it takes a little bit of a small investigation. A lot of times at the precinct level, the inspector will pass it down to a lieutenant to help complete that coaching. They'll actually reach out to the complainant. And sometimes after a conversation, it turns out that either the person's like, yeah, I didn't think this was a big deal, thanks for calling, or it turns out that there actually wasn't anything to coach because after looking at the situation a little more closely, it just wasn't a case that needed to be coached. But the unknown officer issue does come up quite a bit, but at the precinct level, they do have the ability to look at the cases. And some of the ones we send, we're really asking them to take a closer look to figure out if coaching needs to happen. We do put recommendations and guidance in the documents when they're sent. So cases that really do need to be coached, it's actually pretty clearly articulated saying this incident happened, we recommend X. And for the most part, the precincts do take that recommendation. Thank you. So in the review panel this year, we have 25 allegations that have been reviewed. 2 are in split decision, 13 merit decisions, and 13 no merit decisions. We have 27 cases that are currently being scheduled for panel. With the large events in the city, it created a little bit of more case in the queue than we're used to. But we actually just trained a new crop of sworn panelists to review cases. We're going through the commission and appointment cycle right now for review panel and our commissioners. So once we will be at full staff, my prediction is those cases will roll through fairly quickly. So disciplined in the same amount of time, there's 11 corrective actions over the year, 5 coachings, 4 letters of reprimand, 2 suspensions, and 4 terminations coming out of cases out of the Office of Police Conduct Review. There are 16 outstanding cases for the chief to decide still, so there may be more discipline coming before the close that last quarter in 2019. Now we're going to cover OPCR body camera observations.
We have, sorry, one question here from Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. Can you go back one slide? For the 16 outstanding cases, is that a typical amount of outstanding cases around this time of year?
Chair Cano, Councilmember Cunningham, it varies. It's varied year by year for the amount of cases. I think that sometimes when large transitions happen in MPD, that can impact when in that time of year that there may be cases that need to be decided, and if there's changes that have happened in the office.
Large changes, what do you mean by that?
So if leadership changes happen and different people are going to be, so for example, when a review panel's decision leaves our office, it goes to the chief's front office, and then officers are entitled to a hearing called a louder mill hearing, where they're actually allowed to present anything else that's relevant to the case. That hearing has to take place by law. And so the timing for that and when those things are completed and then referred to the chief can, if someone moves out of his position, they change processes, et cetera. So I think, a major transition in leadership in MPD did not happen that long ago. And so I think now processes being implemented, there was promotions and movement again, and that affects the louder mill hearings and when they happen. That's not something that's in control of our office, but it will affect when cases get decided. So I think with the timing of some of the events, this seems to be reasonable to me for the amount of cases to be decided. However, if you did have questions about those timelines, you could always check in with the chief's office.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. And now we're on to body camera observations. These numbers are intended to dovetail with the presentation that we gave you in May to give you kind of an update on those numbers. So right now we have 1 body camera analyst on staff, and this is his assessment of how long it takes him. Now you can see that there's a broad range in things all the way from locating a correct case, downloading the video, watching the videos, and categorizing and summarizing the videos. Now why might that be? Well, that's because the number of officers that may report on a call varies. And so sometimes when we're looking at an incident, there may be 10 officers' body cameras to watch, and it's important to look at those to make sure we're getting the right angle and we can see what's happening. On other calls, there may be 2. So that's why the broad ranges of viewing. And you can see even watching the videos can take 1 to 8 hours. A really important function of the body camera analyst is actually tag those videos, put timestamps on where incidents are occurring, especially related to the complaint. And once that's happened, it passes on to our 2 intake investigators who then take those timestamps, who also watch the video in kind of more of its cultivated form, and then do the very important work of attaching proposed allegations. Then those proposed allegations are brought to the joint supervisor meetings, relevant body camera is reviewed, and then we make a decision. Should a case go to investigation? Should it be handled in another matter? So you can see that, the body camera reviewing, it does kind of filter all the way through, especially in the civilian arm of the Office of Police Conduct Review. Now, a few observations from what's happening as a result of the body camera viewing. So one is that a complaint about a singular issue, often we find other issues. A classic example of this is activation. So someone complains about something, we're going in to locate the video, our body camera analyst says there is no video. So what happens? So now body-worn camera activation violation is tagged on. Or something else is seen in the video that's a policy violation, because we're not expecting the public to understand the entire policy and procedure manual, but if something is spotted, that's brought to the joint supervisors for consideration as an additional allegation onto the complaint. Allegations, the allegations include the complaint processing for joint supervisor review. Those have risen possibly due to the over 600 complaints in 2018. There's quite a bit of body camera that's being viewed by all of us as part of complaint processing. Personally, from my time in the office, I think it's a very useful tool because it's helpful to be able to see the incident, have discussions about whether or not it's a policy violation, moving away from discussing if something actually happened or not. It gives a lot more context, even for case investigation. So what happens when you see trends? Those can be referred to the OPCR auditing function. The PCOC audits lead to, which is the Police Conduct Oversight Commission audits, and issues that they pick up. Our staff acts as staff for the PCOC, so they will then start watching body camera related to whatever the issues they're looking at, and that can also lead to bigger issues that can be analyzed and positive recommendations to come out of. Oftentimes, both forms of audits identify additional policy and procedure that can be addressed. In addition, MPD is actually monitoring body-worn camera on the precinct level, and a nice system has been set up that we worked on that's electronic notification. So if a supervisor sees something now, it's not just on them to handle it internally and hope it resolves. They actually refer the issue to OPCR, Internal Affairs, to route through OPCR. We handle it like we would handle any other complaint, and then that is tracked and captured. So now we just have much better data on what the complaints actually are and what not only the public's seeing, but the supervisor's seeing and wanted addressed from their own employees. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the collaborative efforts that OPCR has worked on. I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on some of the reports that we presented to the council, but sometimes we're in partnership situations where there's actually been a lot of good work being done. So one of our major partners is Internal Audit, and some of the projects we worked on with Internal Audit this year are equity and recruitment, off-duty, and a body-worn camera audit. Now, the equity and recruitment study, I think, is a great example of how we try and work alongside other departments when issues arise at the same time. Internal Audit had on their work plan that they were interested in looking at equity and recruitment issues to diversify the Minneapolis Police Department. Are they, really getting the broadest range of candidates? At the same time, the Police Conduct Oversight Commission also started raising the issue that they really wanted to look at how are people being hired? What about women especially? What about people of color? So that issue, it appeared that both entities were coming to it at the same time. So that resulted in a really positive partnership that's actually taking a long-range look at equity and hiring and how can things be improved to hopefully recruit and retain more diverse candidates in the Minneapolis Police Department. One thing that's already been implemented is a change in testing standards, and a hope that women and minority candidates won't exit that process very early and will have more of a shot at becoming a police officer. There will be more things developing on that, and we will report that to you as it happens. The off-duty study is kind of looking at best practices for off-duty, what's happening now, what can be improved. And the body-worn camera audit, which is something we participate with Internal Audit every single year as subject matter experts. And our analysts will review a lot of body camera, looking specifically at force incidents to make sure that audit is fully informed. The Minneapolis Police Department is obviously a partner in our work, and we work closely with them. Some of the positive projects that we've worked on with them this year include the co-responder program. As many of you already know, the Police Conduct Oversight Commission actually created the idea for the co-responder program in one of their studies. That was then picked up by the Minneapolis Police Department, and then it was implemented first as a pilot and approved by the City Council and the Mayor, and now it's on its way to a full-fledged project that's in all the precincts. One very nice feature about the launch of that co-responder program is that in all of the interviews, in all of interviews for staff to work on co-responder, in some of the ideation meetings, OPCR analysts were actually included in that process. And that was really nice that after having been at the beginning of the idea to kind of help see it through with the police department and have them take our office's input. The body-worn camera policies, something that was worked on very early through the commission. However, as the body camera policies have been changed and updated, last update was in April of 2018, OPCR analysts have been at the table to kind of give input and inform those decisions. Another major project with the Minneapolis Police Department that I don't know if it's on a lot of people's radar is actually the discipline matrix. The discipline matrix is a really important tool that informs the chief's decisions on discipline. It had been quite some time since it had a large overhaul. Now that has happened, and our law enforcement analyst was actually in those meetings and really a valuable voice in that MPD took the recommendations. And so we're hoping that, as time goes on and that new discipline matrix is implemented, that it leads to better police accountability on the discipline end. So looking ahead for the next year, One is just trying to plan out, always doing systematic process improvement, and as increasing complaints seem to be the norm, the new normal for OPCR, how do we handle that? How do we best use resources? And that's something that's an ongoing discussion in our office. Also, body camera. Wonderful the policies have changed that officers are wearing body camera more, but also it leads to more body camera viewing, kind of talking about our best practices for viewing body camera, how we're using it, how we can sustain what we have now. More OPCR and PCOC programmatic audits. There are ideas and good things that are happening that are in their infancy now, and hopefully within the next year we'll be able to bring reports to you on the issues that we're working on. And just sustaining the positive growth in the office. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and it appears that, some people can look at a rising complaint level as something that's negative. You could also look at it that people are more aware of the system. They understand what can happen. They understand there can be accountability. And I wanted to close on a positive note to share something with you. We participate in the National Association of Civilian Oversight for Law Enforcement. Our office was recognized at the national conference by the Agency for Excellence in Oversight for the last year. It was really nice to be recognized on a national stage as the city of Minneapolis with positive oversight. So we brought this to share so you could see it, but just wanted to thank you for your support in helping our program and helping us get to this point. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you. That's very remarkable. So thanks for sharing that information. Appreciate the updates. I'm going to see here if we have any comments or questions. We have Councilmember Ellison in queue.
You started to kind of get at it at the end, but I was wondering if you had any sort of thoughts on why why you do think that the complaints are increasing. Because as you said, it could be positive or negative, and just kind of wanted to see what your professional opinion is.
Sure. Chair Cano, Councilmember Ellison, I do feel like we have done a lot of targeted and strategic outreach into the community, and not just into the general community, but also the legal community, people who may be working with these issues more frequently, such as legal aid, the Public Defender's Office, Legal Rights Center. Making sure that it's on the radar that we exist and that people do have a place to come for complaints, I think has really helped. Just getting out in the community. And I think the data portal, it's been a few years since we've had the public data portal, but people can now see in real time the discipline that's happening. And so if they think that complaints and they see that things are being even on a lower level coached, I think it gives people a little more confidence that if they make a complaint, that it's going to be analyzed, even if it doesn't end up going the way that they want, that people are looking at it and taking it seriously. Because even a complaint that we ultimately determine should not go forward, it's still viewed by body camera analysts, intake investigators, the commander of internal affairs, and myself. And that's a lot of review for something. So I would like to think that a lot of those targeted efforts, and that's a staff effort. I think some recognition like this doesn't happen with one person. We've had, a dedicated staff who's been with us for a significant amount of time, who's been putting a lot of work into making sure that people understand that it's a professional organization that's dedicated to hearing people's issues.
Thank you for that. I had a few follow-up questions on the average days to complete an intake slide. I know that we're looking at the averages, but how long? And I'm happy to see them coming down dramatically since the new staff was hired. The investigator was hired. How long can some of these intakes drag out? If we're looking at the averages here.
Chair Cano, Councilmember Cunningham, Councilmember Ellison, I think the issue is that I think the averages you're looking at about right now, we're at about a month. I mean, of course, we want it to be lower. And you can see that even, this whole graph here, I was here this entire time. And, it was really of importance to us at the beginning. We liked that 2 weeks. I would like to be at that 2 weeks, but also the complaint volumes were nowhere near what they are now when I started. And so, I think, shooting for a month, because I also want to be aware that I have a small staff and, making sure that they're still able to do their job to the high quality that I expect of them without really burning out. I think that it's probably, I would say just anecdotally from looking at the month, it's probably about a month from when someone files a complaint. But if we're able to get to it quicker, and always priority cases are flagged and routed. So, that's, if there's something that is an emergency, it gets heard that week. And so that can sometimes push other cases that may not be as emergent back a little bit, but we really try and stay within that month.
Thank you. And I asked that just 'cause I'm also curious about how to, for cases that might be taking a little longer, how do we make sure we're staying, what's the communication like to the person who made the complaint so that they do know this case might be taking a little longer, but we're still actually working on it, because that affects trust as well.
Right. Chair Cano, Councilmember Ellison, I think the hard thing about that is the Minnesota Data Practices Act really restricts what we're allowed to tell complainants. I can tell you personally, from coming in more of an advocacy role in my previous work, it is quite frustrating to not be able to give updates to people who are filing complaints that you would like them to know. So a lot of times I cannot tell people what's going on. We try and give people general information, though, if they're calling. My intake investigators are really very good with talking to community members who are calling to ask about their complaints, but they have to give them more general information, like generally it will take this amount of time to be heard, but we tell people what we can, but we are very severely limited by the Data Practices Act and what we can share about cases that are being processed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm not seeing any more comments or questions, so I appreciate your presentation, and thanks to everyone who joined us this morning for their public testimony. So without further business before us, let's move to receive and file this presentation from the Office of Police Conduct Review as their annual report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.